Hello, DebV here. I am going to show you today how we can simply do a circle coaster, mug rug, whatever you want to call it. I think of a coaster as just the small one layer kind of a thing, and a mug rug as something that I'm going to turn. So I'm going to do a mug rug. And I want to use this design we did in the last video. This is my test stitch out. It turned out so beautifully. And why waste your testers if they turn out, right? So I had bought this design with the intentions of using it in a circle mug rug. And now I'm going to turn it into one. So I've got the design on my system sitting right here. You can tell up here it can use a 5x7 or a 6x10. My machine is the Baby Lock Flourish 2, so its largest embroidery field is a 6x10. Oh, sorry for the dust. So I've got that on there. Now I'm going to hit add. Now if you say you're all done and it's sitting on your machine and you're like, okay, but I'll have to pull it up again to do the circles, won't I? No, hit your back button. See? And now we're back. And I can go even farther. So I hit add, I go into frames, and if you're anything like me, you probably never have looked in here before. Believe it or not, about 30 minutes ago was first time. And it's only been, say, 30 minutes because I fought with my tripod afterwards and had to give that up. The reason this is shaking is I'm trying to hold this in my hand. I put it on a tiny tripod, shoved my machine back, still couldn't fit it on the table. I had one of those hangy kind of things. It gave out, so the camera was drooping straight down. I'm like, oh, I'm not meant to do this today. And I decided I will try hand holding this, and when I edit, if it's too shaky, we'll do it again. But in that field, I've got, these are my frames, right? And yes, I know it's not a gazillion frames. Really, for one thing, how many do you need? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I keep moving my head. I talk and I move my arms and head. I just always have. So I want a circle. We're going to hit the circle. Now, this is where you get into your gazillion, billion different. See, it will go. It has all these edges. And I guess it would have been smart if when I first got the machine, I would have maybe stitched out every single one. I'm not that organized. I get it and I want to play, and that's that. But I want a plane. That looks like a plane to me. So now, see that tiny little box? You can see the little tiny red edges of it. That's way too small. So we're going to hit size, and the arrow's pointing outward on all sides. That's the one I want because I want it to enlarge evenly. And I'm going to just keep touching it. It'll take a few. I could hold it down, but if you're just touching it, you have a little more control. Now that looks like it's right on the edge. I would rather have a little extra on the side myself. I'm okay with that. It's for me. If it was for someone else, I would just keep testing it. But I'm going to go just what looks like a little past it because we got to try to fit this down inside with a little fabric on it. Now, if you feel like it's a little off center, you can move it down, see, just a hair. But I don't know that it matters because, see, this circle is not a perfect circle. That's the thing. So that's why you see a little more over there and a little more there. And any way I move it, it still does it. But that looks great. Now we can leave it at 1 and just keep restarting it because you need 3. And I was going to add 3 And you can change your color. I can go right here and I can say, oh, I want that one yellow. Okay. But as you can see, I don't have a duplicate key. I can change the density of the stitches. I can mirror it. I can rotate it. I can move it. I can select it. Now it's selected the inner one, which I don't need. So I selected it and I deleted it because I'm not going to stitch all that out again. If you want to do that stitching, then you need the circle before it. So you kind of have to, for my machine, I would have to delete it and then add it again. But I can add another one. I would just have to add another circle and enlarge it to that size. And now it's there, see, real small. I can hit size. Now I can also hold it, see, it'll grow real fast. Now I don't want it, that makes it right on that line. And I know they say, oh, you don't want them to be right on the line. Yeah, I think I do. For one thing, that lower line is going to be on the inside. This outer, well, maybe I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make that one just a smidge bigger because that one is going to be holding this down. I'm going to hoop it. I'm going to put my hoop in. I'm going to stitch down the first circle. I'm going to place this down and I'm going to stitch it in place. Then I'm going to put my backing in. And I'll do 2 layers, fold it in half, and cross them by a minimum of 1/2 inch. I would recommend 3/4 of an inch because I've done it where it was just like a 1/2 inch and it shifted a little bit, so it became more like 3/8 of an inch. And I didn't like the way it laid. That bulk from at the fold, they were too close to each other, I felt. But it also depends on what fabric you use. If you decide you want to stabilize the back, I wouldn't recommend stabilizing your back pieces. They are folded in half. They're double layered each end. And then where they cross, it becomes 4 layers. That's why you can end up with that bulk. If you can kind of bypass them a little bit more, it seems to even it out. My cups sit better, I think. Anyhow, on the back of my circle, I have done lightweight fleece, and I laid it down and kind of trimmed. So yeah, I got a little cockeyed, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. Just a mug rug from my coffee. But I'm going to put 2 on here, and I'm going to say okay. Now we need another one. That's the final one. Now, like I said, you can do one and just use it all. But I wanted that second one just a smidge wider. So I'm going to say add. And I'm going to do it all over again. Find my 10. And I'm going to go ahead and change that color just so I can look and see. It makes it easier. And I'm going to, now this one, I want it on that yellow. I know that yellow is right at the edge of my picture. So I want that right at that yellow. And that's what I'm going to be happy with. And now I can hit end edit, embroidery, and it is ready to go. So that's my placement, my tack down, and then the seam line. If you want a double row of the seam line, you need to just either stitch that twice or put a second one on top of it. I'll even show you how to do that. Go back, add another one. I'm going to keep the same color when I get to it. Whoop, I carried away there. I want that red also. And now I want to enlarge it. Now I'll know I grabbed the wrong red. Of course I did. So, let's try that one. What, are you kidding me? Oh, duh. I'm doing it in the machine. So it's automatically going to cut it and do the next color if I've got the right one or not. So no matter what, it's in the center. Don't ignore me. Well, please don't ignore me, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, so we've got it set up, and I went ahead and I did a double stitch around the edge just for tutorial sake, if nothing else. When I'm in the system on the computer, I can set that last one up to go around twice. So I'll either do 2 lines or I will do the triple stitch. And everyone's used to calling that the bean stitch. It is a name for it, but it is also called a stretch stitch. So if you sew with knits, you have to learn about the stretch stitches and that. And they go forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. They have a little more give, is the idea. And they make great seam stitches in your embroidery work. Okay. Now I have to get reset up with the other tripod. Get this out of my shaky hand so that we can get this turned into our mug rug. Okay, I've got it all set up. I'm trying real hard to not knock this tripod. I used to have an arm that came down, but it was a bendy kind of an arm, you know, one of the wire ones, and it worked great. But over time, you know, because then I would push it up out of my way when I wasn't filming, it just flops. I think the wire broke inside of the plastic. So I have to use a tripod now. And I do tend to be clumsy. So if I bump you, I am sorry. All right. When I made the circles, yes, that design fit in a 5x7 hoop. But to add these circles around it, because it just barely fit in that 5, I needed to go up to a 6. I do have a 6x6 hoop that I had found on Amazon, and I use it because this machine can't do 8. That was the largest square I could get, and to be honest, it took me a couple of years. Every once in a while I'd think about it and do another search, and I finally found one for sale. I've got one piece of wash away here, and it's just stuck to the bottom. In a previous video, I showed how I use a double-sided tape on the back and just stick my stabilizer to that. It doesn't matter what color thread I use, and this happens to be on my machine, so I'm just going to stitch out my placement line. It's all threaded, it's ready to go. What is it not? Oh, duh, I forgot to hit. I had made sure that it would fit, and I was in the editing screen. Very sorry about that. Here we go. Now let's stitch out the circle. If you're worried that it won't stay in place, just put a little bit of double-sided tape in here. Well, this is really sticky. I think the heat's gotten to it. It actually got warm outside, and I haven't bothered. I have to move a table to open the window in here, and I had to remove my fan to put up the track lighting, so it can get toasty at times, which is fine because that doesn't happen very often. I am in a long sleeve shirt, so it's a very lightweight long sleeve shirt. Get out of the way, thread. Okay, by doing this, and wow, that was the end of that roll. It was just really super sticky. Okay, I have put stuff on my fingers, on my fingernails, excuse me, to stay. Please stay. It might not stay. It was the very end of that roll. No, that one's not staying at all. I don't care. Let me get it out off of my fingers. That one was literally gooey. I don't know. Okay, I'll be back when I've got this done. Okay, I'm back. That stuff was so, I don't know, aged. I don't know. It was gooey, 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 gooey. And the backing was permanently attached to it. So I peeled it off and I got out my hair. I swear, it's in everything. This is actually wash away double-sided tape. And I find it useful at times, but it really doesn't stick. Look at my hair is everywhere. Long hair is a pain in the butt, but I'm not going to fix it, so I cut it. So because I have put the iron-on interfacing, or fleece, excuse me, on the back, it's nice and stiff, so it kind of gives me that edge to go by to get it centered in here. And you know, if you have a picture that you really want to be a certain way with the seam line, then yes, I would suggest making sure you put it in that way. I'm going to check my little picture here. All right, and then I'm going to smooth this out so that it catches that tape. Hard to do in this tiny little spot. When you're doing it at home, it'll be a lot easier for you because you can just pull your hoop up, take it to your table. You're not reaching around a camera. So it won't be nearly as difficult as I'm making it look like. Now I'm going to first stitch this down. You don't need to trim these edges because when all is said and done, you will be cutting that anyway, so don't worry about it. Now that we've got it all buckled into place, let's go ahead and do our stitch down. Now on my screen, it had looked very, very close. But if it ever gets done, in reality, if you look at this, I'm not sure how well you can see it on your screen, but I have quite a distance there. So that works. Now that it's stitched down, we have to get the backing on. I took 2 pieces, and because this is almost 5 inches, and I want to make sure that it goes past it. This is my fold, see? And I've ironed it. If you don't have a steam iron, just mist it a little bit, get a little damp kind of a thing. Oh my. Now here I had thought I had added plenty. I used a ruler and everything. But we want to go past the center point. So if this is your center, make sure you go up a little higher, like 3/5 of the way. And then you're going to take the other piece. Move it down just a hair. And I'm going to move this back. Now, be prepared for it might catch this edge. So I'm going to get my stick and I'm going to turn this on. Oh, it's going the opposite way. Turning it off and on makes it go slower because you know how it goes slow when it first starts. And I want it to go slow so that I have plenty of time to stop it if it doesn't grab it. It grabbed it. And this side should be fine. And remember, it's actually two separate patterns you put on top of each other. So you'll have to do it again. And it's stitched down, so it should hold it just fine. All the same, I am going to get my stick under there just for a little added insurance. And that is done with the hoop part. Let's get to my desk so we can finish this up. Okay, I have tried hooking the microphone I use with with my phone up to my computer. I've had this computer for a couple of years. I never looked at the top really. I had forgot it had a microphone jack on the top. I could have been using that. I always used the microphone and the my webcam, which is on a bendable arm above me. But the sound is very different, and it drove me nuts when I would edit because one records so much louder and blah blah blah. So I'm going to give this a shot. I'm hoping the sound is a little better. If I ever actually earn a little money off of YouTube, I'll invest in a better microphone. I can't afford to keep wasting money on these things just for fun. This is like a hobby, something to keep me busy, that kind of thing. We have to feel like we're contributing. And since I can't work anymore, this is my way. I can't set this down. I piled everything off to the side to have a clean spot. All right, way over there. Sit. I put this on here because I have a glass plate on my new desk. It's a Tim Holtz. I used to do a lot of cards and paper crafting. I love making boxes and stuff like that. So, and I do have my little paper compulsion thing going. So, I had this, but because I would film at my desk, I quit using it. And my old desk, it was such a disaster. It didn't matter. And I cut a cutting board down to fit on the top. Well, it didn't fit on the top of this one. I cut it to fit on my sewing machine, and I really need to show you people that. It is the coolest idea I think I've had in a while, because I bought the hydraulic lift for your sewing tables. I bought a sewing table, and it came and it was damaged. And it's like, all the things I had to sell to have the money for this table. I mean, I sold my heat press, all this stuff, so that I could buy this sewing cabinet. And it came damaged, and I contacted them, and I told them it was damaged. Not so much that you couldn't use it, it was the wood was damaged. But, I mean, I waited 40 years to have a sewing cabinet. So I kind of wanted it perfect. They offered me a $25 refund towards it if I wanted to keep it. I thought, $25 isn't, that's nothing. So I returned it, and I used money from that to buy the hydraulic lift, and asked my husband, cut down the sewing table so I can fit the serger on. It's got its own little table now, and it's on wheels, so I can move it if I wanted to. I asked him to cut down my other sewing table so it would all fit in the one wall, and install the hydraulic lift. It came with no instructions. We probably should have filmed it, but we didn't think about it at the time. He couldn't really, he did searches and I did searches, and everything just sort of talked about it and showed you the lift and, screw this in, but didn't actually show you what you're screwing in and how to measure for it or anything. So it was hit and miss. It took trial and error. It took him all week because, we're old, and he has a bad back too. So he was having to crawl down on the floor underneath the table and do it, facing up. And I told him, not a rush. When you get it done, you get it done. He did get it done. And, he had to cut the hole in the top for my machine to be able to go down inside. And I went, something I didn't think about. We did not make the hole bigger. We made it to fit my fob. And I also have a Janome, so that was a mistake. That's, I don't have room for it to be out, so it's in a case behind my dresser. No, behind his dresser, behind my dresser is where the cats hide. And I forgot about it. Hopefully it'll fit in that hole. But anyhow, I said, I can't even I didn't think about that, but I can't have an insert. I can't just use the insert that you can order, because they make them for the size of the hole that, that generic hole that you get in the tables you order. So we're going to have to make our own. And he, okay, well, we'll figure it out. But I wanted to sew. And I saw that cutting board sitting there, and I went, yeah, I'm going to use that. And I cut a hole in it for the plate. It's a fob, so it has the bobbin in the top, drop-in bobbin, but you have a pop-off plate to clean it out and all that. I didn't want to have to constantly take this board off to get to the machine and all this. I thought, we'll just make the hole fit all the way around it, which I did. And I cut out a slot on the side so that it could slide up around the right side of it, where your screen and everything is. So it covers the rest of that hole and a good portion of the bits in the front and the back. I mean, it was not that big of a gap anyways. And because I didn't make it a huge gap, it really doesn't have a lot of play. It worked great. I'm going to tell you, it worked great. Even with my corners notched and all that stuff from how I had used it before, still works. So I will need to show you that. Okay, that was a whole lot of talking to get to this. This is, anyhow, that's what the whole conversation was, to tell you. This is here to cut the glare. I noticed in editing another video that this thing glares awful because it's glass. So I decided this is my little ironing board thing that I recovered. It has the cutting on the back. I bought this 20 years ago and it was really stained up and nasty looking. This one's already starting to get a little stained. So let's get our scissors, and because it's a circle, yeah, I got smart and put these next to my desk because I tend to sit here and do my cutting. The cathedral window quilt I'm doing in the hoop is circles, and I've made a video to show you how I do the pieces, and it's really cool. Don't forget you have tape in there. I'm going to pull that piece out so that I can get inside and cut. But I sit here and I cut them with the pinking shears because circles lay better cut with pinking shears. They end up with all those little notches and it gives them a little more give. You do not want to cut any of those threads, and because one of them is on the back side, you know that if you kind of nick that one, that's okay. That was just a placement one. So you got that little bit of extra spot of room there. So you can cut pretty close and not worry too much. I'm not worried about it fraying. That's the great thing about making all this stuff yourself. If it starts to come apart or it gets all stained up, you just make another one. Toss it out and make another one. My goal is to use up all my fabric and threads before I die. Of course, I also plan to live to be 99 years old, but, you know, I don't think I'm going to be able to sew that up until I'm 99 years old. So I quit worrying about wasting fabric doing this or that. I admit that I've started with fabrics that I don't like as much. Now I save these pieces, not that it's, you know, big enough to put in a hoop or anything, but if you don't have, say, spray starch, or you just don't even want to have an aerosol in your house, I took this and I had cut out the squares for the center of my cathedral window. I had cut them out actually for something else. So I had a massive amount of squares, and I then decided to find a project to do them on. But when I started putting them in the embroidery machine, trying to hold them in place, I didn't want to use a bunch of tape and such. I melted down my scraps in hot water, and then I soaked them in that. You know, I just kind of stuck them down in that water, and that way it absorbed starchy water because this has got a starch in it. They also have, for the ones for underneath, there's, if you look real close, let's see, is that gonna work? There we go. Can you see how it looks almost like a mesh in there? There's tiny little fibers, and you know, apparently they dissolve at some point, but I noticed they were in my water. So maybe it needs to be boiling hot and then let it sit and dissolve. I don't know. I soaked them in it, and then I just took a damp rag and kind of wiped across them, and then I ironed them flat, and it made them nice and stiff, and they didn't shift around as much. So yeah, even if the scraps are too small to use for anything else, if you think you might need starchy water for stiffening a project, these will work and dissolve if you dissolve them. I normally stick them in like a Ziploc baggie, something to signify that that's what that is, my bits and pieces. And if I haven't used it in a few months, then I just empty the bag because I'm going to fill it up again. I don't worry about that. So, yeah, I had thought, woo, I'm gonna do machine embroidery videos online, and they're gonna be so popular, and I need all that. I actually bought quite a bit of that, so I'm not worried about losing some of it. I don't think I'll ever use it all. Now, as you can see, it's kind of puffy. Ooh, what is... Oh, that's the bits and pieces. That was a knit, remember? How would you remember? That was a knit fabric. And it's left, fuzzies where at the edges where I trimmed it. Now, if I didn't think to warm it up, so let's just give it a second. So this is our project, all done, nice and thin. I do love that iron-on fleece in there. I had bought this stuff I'm using on Temu, but there are other places, and Joann Fabrics does have it. They also usually, they'll have stabilizer and interfacing sales about once a month, I think, like 40% off. And I did order 2 yards through them on sale, and they had sent me a coupon. If I clicked on the link, it automatically took 25% off of even the sale items in my cart and gave me free shipping. If you put something in your cart and you don't order it right away, they do tend to generate a coupon. It's not, I've never had one that good. But, if you don't need it instantly, you might want to let it sit there in your cart for a day or so. As long as that sale is going to last, for a while, you're safe. So I happen to have had something else in my cart, and it generated the coupon. And so one email was with the coupon, and another email was telling me about the sale again. I get those like 3 times a day. And I went, I'm going to order a little more. I want to check out what theirs is like, because this is kind of stiff, which is great for the bags and such, and the coasters, it's fine. But I was curious if the ones Joann's carried might be a little lighter weight or thinner or softer, whatever you want to call it. As long as it has as much glue on it, because this stuff really holds well, and I love it. But this is what you just turn it there. It's like making an envelope pillowcase, they just overlap each other. No extra closure needed. If you're concerned, put a little piece of Velcro in there, sticky stuffing, but I'm not worried. I'm going to just set my glass on here. It'll sit perfect. And yes, it's Tupperware, and you're going to see my tea. I'm trying to be a little better. I am a Pepsi drinker, and I am going to be 64 in a couple of months, and it's like, maybe you need to clean up your act a little bit here. But yeah, it's plenty big enough for a big mug too. So there you go. Thank you for joining me. And this can also be, obviously, same procedure if you wanted to make it into a square or a diamond. You just, any fabrics, it doesn't have to be an embroidered fabric, but that's how you can do it in your embroidery machine without having to purchase a pattern. You can just, at minimum of 3 circles or squares or diamonds, or use the same one and just keep starting it over again, because if your machine does it once, it's going to come back and do it again. They would be directly on top of each other that way. If you want it spaced a little bit, like the placement, the first stitch line a little bit bigger, then remember to do at least 2. And then you can always jump forward to the second one, which would be a little smaller, and use it for your seam line. Minimum of 2 seam lines. You want security there. You want it to hold tight. You don't want it coming loose. Thank you so much for joining me. I do hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.